Welcome to our Women's Month closing event. Yo me llamo Nicole Suarez de Telemundo. My name is Nicole Suarez from Telemundo, and I am so excited to be here to talk about this super important topic because we can't talk about being unstoppable women without mentioning financial independence. Para ser mujeres imparables tenemos que ser muy inteligentes también con nuestras finanzas, y tengo el placer y el privilegio de estar hoy con Silvana Henao de CNBC para hablar sobre este tema. ¿Cómo estás, Silvana?
Súper bien, Nicole. Muy contenta de estar contigo, de hablar de este tema tan importante para las mujeres.
Let's start off by talking about what is the most important to being an unstoppable woman, financially speaking, the basics.
So the basics, I think it comes down really to being curious, right? We have to start with being curious. What that means is just don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, these days it's pretty easy to have access, to a financial planner. And, one of the good things about women is that we really usually are not afraid to ask questions. And I think that one of the main things is, we need to start building financial independence is by, building on the idea that we can't rely on anyone else, right? We can't rely on anyone else to secure our financial future because, if that support is gone, what happens to you, right? So we have to start with that. We have to start with the thinking, building the thinking of what are we going to do? We have to think about also cash flow management. Think about how do we live below our means? That's such an important thing that unfortunately para los latinos que llegamos de nuestros países y empezamos a trabajar y a ganar más dinero, y decimos, okay, gané dinero, me lo voy a gastar. We can't do that, right? Like, it's so important to just live below our means. I think those are kind of like the key principles. How are we going to manage our cash? How are we going to build our mind to think about, okay, I need to think about myself, secure my future financially. And then one of the other things we have to think about is saving for our future and paying ourselves first, right? So we have to think about, how am I going to pay myself and establish good savings habits for the future, right? So savings is key. Building our financial, our minds to set it up and think about how we're going to protect ourselves and our cash flow management. Those are kind of like just basic principles. And like I said before, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask a question when you're unsure about retirement, about savings, how to get started.
Entonces, para recopilar, ser curioso y, por supuesto, ahorrar, ¿verdad? Ahorrar, buscar la manera de, aunque sea de a poquitos, ahorrar hacia el futuro, porque no sabemos qué nos depara el futuro. Pero antes de entrar a más consejos, quiero preguntarte cuáles son los errores que muchas veces cometemos. What are those big mistakes that maybe we can make before investing?
One of the biggest mistakes that a lot of us make is using credit cards for amounts in excess of our budgets, right? So we think, I'll just pay it little by little. And then what does that do? That hurts us down the line because then we're paying off something that we really couldn't afford to begin with, especially if it's something that wasn't necessary, right? Emergencies are very different. And, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, when we use our credit cards to buy something unnecessary that's above our budget, that's a big problem. Another problem is using retail therapy. Que uno dice, tuve una semana mala, muy estresante, quiero irme de shopping y eso me va a hacer sentir mejor. ¿Qué pasa? Ahí otra vez nos estamos afectando financieramente, es un impacto negativo en nuestro bolsillo, porque ¿qué pasa? Aquí es donde vienen las tarjetas de crédito otra vez. Lo más seguro es que estamos usando una tarjeta, to pay all of that off. And, we always use this retail therapy as a way to solve our sadness, or even when you have a good week too. It's not just when you've had a bad week. When you have a good week, you want to celebrate. You want to say, I want to treat myself. Let me treat myself. And unfortunately, while it is nice in the moment, most of the time it does hurt us down the road because we're spending money that we shouldn't. We're spending sometimes money that we don't even have yet. So those are kind of the key things. One of the other things that is a mistake is being intimidated by money, right? Or the idea of investing. We think, well, I don't know enough about it. So, I don't want to think about it because what if I lose my money? But investing, there's so much more. You can start with so little. And as long as you know that it's going to grow over time, because it does, it always does. The market and investing, it is very volatile. but over time, it always grows. Always, 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 always. You just have to be very patient and very, very consistent. And then one of the other big mistakes that I think we make is we don't set up systematic saving systems, right? Where meaning we don't automatically set up accounts that, every time, I get paid, it's gonna, it's gonna go to this account, it's gonna go to that account. I have an account for, because I'm gonna buy a car. I have an account because I'm, saving for a down payment. I have an account for a vacation. And these are all accounts that you can set up with the bank and set up automatic transfers, right? So these are kind of mistakes that we make. Instead, what we do is whenever we think we have a little extra money, then we'll put it into the account, right? We should just set it up automatically, out of sight, out of mind.
Well, I've heard of those applications also, like Acorns, for example, that take cents out of your account, and before you know it, you can have a couple $100 or $1,000.
Absolutely. And those are so great. I have Acorns, and it's so great because just what you just said, you set it up automatically once you set up the app, and it's so easy. These apps, and it's not just Acorns, there's so many out there where you just simply, you set it up, and you, like I said, you set it and you forget it. Out of sight, out of mind, it automatically deducts, however much you want to set it up. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, and it'll automatically take out $5, $10, $20. And like you just said, within a year, you'll look at it, you're like, oh, wow, look at that. I didn't even realize it. And, you could easily have depending on how much you're putting in, a couple of $1,000.
So let's talk about more tips about how we can be financially fierce. ¿Qué más podemos hacer para ser completamente independientes con nuestras finanzas?
Mira, I think that the most important thing, right? Like, I think the top things for us to be financially fierce, right? Just very simple. Always have a plan for your income, right? We always need a plan for our income, because where's money going to come from? How are we going to live our day to day? How are we going to plan for our future if we don't have a plan for an income? Whether it's working, whether it's running a business, being self-employed, we just have to have a plan for an income, right? One of the other things, I think we have to challenge ourselves with big goals, right? And this could be, like I mentioned before, when it comes to savings, if you set yourself a big goal and you say, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start saving for, it could be retirement, or like I said, a vacation. Set an amount and make it something that, it's attainable. Of course, you want to make it something that's attainable, but also something that, that challenges you to say, all right, I'm going to have to make a couple of sacrifices here and there. Maybe not go out to dinner that night, maybe not order food that night, instead stay in and let me check what I have in my refrigerator and save that money, right? So
what would you say is the key to making that successful? Because it's very easy to say, oh, I'm not going to go to dinner, but in actuality, when we're in that moment, how do you say, no, I'm not going to go to that dinner? I mean, a lot of times we want to work and we also want to enjoy life. So what is the key to making that mental switch? ¿Cómo cambiamos la mentalidad en torno a los ahorros? A decir, tal vez no voy a cenar esta noche.
Es muy difícil, ¿verdad? Porque como lo dijiste, es difícil porque cuando estás en el momento dices, no, pero yo quiero disfrutar, trabajo muy duro, ¿por qué no puedo disfrutar? La cosa es hay que hacer los sacrificios, ¿verdad? Entonces es simplemente, it's willpower, right? It really, really just comes down to that. Like, you really have to think about what is my purpose here? What is my purpose? And set yourself on that. Because if you just keep thinking, I just want to enjoy life. I just want to enjoy life. Okay, yeah, that is great. Of course, we do. But you really have to change your mindset. Because if you don't change your mindset, unfortunately, it's going to be very hard to reach those goals. And we really, really have to just think about forward think, what am I saving for? And if I don't, unfortunately, say no to this outing, then that's less money that's going into what I'm trying to save. So it's just really, it's all in your mind. We really have to change our mindset to not always want to go spend and have this what we call, FOMO, this fear of missing out, because a lot of us have that, right? We don't want to miss out.
For sure. And obviously, we're living in times that are very difficult. La inflación, el precio de la gasolina, la comida. I mean, we're feeling it in all areas of our life. What do you say to the women that are watching us right now that think that they don't have the extra dollars here and there to save for their future?
So it's hard, right? Like you just said, it's very hard because we're living in such a difficult time. And with prices increasing everywhere. I was just having this conversation with my mom yesterday. My mom was at Costco and she's like, Silvana, no puedo creer, el salmón aumentó como $10. And she's like, Dios mío, es increíble. So yeah, it's tough, right? It's very tough. And we have to make adjustments, right? We have to make adjustments. But, it's not impossible. It's not impossible to start investing. If you say, I don't have the budget, it's one of those things where even $5 makes a difference. The key is to stay consistent. And what we were talking about earlier about these apps these days that exist, with these apps, like I said, even $5 that you do, once a week, every 2 weeks, once a month, and you do it where it automatically does it. Like I said, by the end of a couple of months or a year, you're going to have money that you didn't even expect to have. But that's really the key. It's just to stay consistent and start with even a little bit, because it's better than nothing, right? If you don't start at all with anything, you're not going to have anything. So the key is just start little, because then over time, our budgets are always going to adjust, because we learn to live with what we have, right? And then over time, you realize, oh, you know what? I can do actually a little bit more. And then you just keep increasing little by little as you see that, oh, you know what? It's possible. I can do it. I can add a little bit more. Instead of $5, I'm going to make it $10 and then $15 and then little by little. But you just have to start somewhere.
Definitely. And that feeling of seeing the number go up in your savings account is like,
it's so satisfying. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Empiezas a ver que esos ahorros van aumentando de poquito a poco y ya como que te sientes como que un poco de libertad, ¿verdad?
Sí, absolutamente. Y te digo una anécdota personal, que mi sobrina, que también es mi hijada, ella cumple los 15 años el próximo año. Entonces, hace como unos 2 o 3 años, yo dije, ok, de regalo me la quiero llevar para Hawái. ¿Qué hice? Abrí una cuenta online de savings. Automáticamente, cada que me pagan, saco una cantidad de ahí que va a esa cuenta. Y desde 2 o 3 años, yo digo, oh my God, ya casi llego a donde es y voy a tener lo suficiente para llevar a mi sobrina de vacación.
Qué bueno.
So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, all it takes is just, you got to start and be consistent. And then when you see that amount, you're like, wow, like I did it.
When you talk about creating those accounts separately, porque también pasa que tienes tu cuenta de ahorros en la misma cuenta de tu checking normal, ¿no? En la misma cuenta, y es difícil a veces evitar la tentación de hacer transferencia entre las dos cuentas. Do you use like a separate entity or a separate bank for your savings account?
For that reason. Okay. I do for that reason. Yeah. And the good thing is that, like I said, there's so many these days that are very easy to open online. There's a Capital One, there's Charles Schwab. There's just so many different ones where they're online and you keep it separate from where you keep your regular day-to-day banking. And because that way it just makes it so much easier to like not really look at it all the time, because it's completely separate from everything else. And when you do look at it, you've seen how much it grows and you're like, wow, I didn't even realize I could do that. Like that's, I mean, like we were saying, the satisfaction of that is just, it's incomparable.
We've always heard that formula. Is it 30% for living costs? How does it go?
It's 30, 30, and then 40. So 30, 30. So it's 30% for living. It's 30% for your expenses, and then for saving, and then the rest of it, it gets kind of split up, right? It gets split up because, so it's kind of changed a little bit over time, where I was actually looking into this recently. It's changed a little bit over time because of how prices have changed recently. So I know they're kind of working on a new formula, but the thing is, a big part of that is for your savings account.
Yes.
For saving and for investing, not just, obviously we always have to cover our living costs, which includes, either rent or mortgage, food, transportation, that kind of stuff always takes up a really big chunk of all of our incomes. And that's something that, obviously you have to take care of, right? And then it's really important to save, right? So then you'll put another amount to save, and then the rest, that's when it comes to all like the little things, the little extra things. If you have leftover, like we mentioned before, you don't put what's left over in your savings account. You set an amount to put in your savings account, and then what's left over, that's when you're spending money.
Definitely. I started investing in the stock market during the pandemic. Literally, it was like, my friend was like, oh, I'm doing it. Look at it. It's going up and down and it's crazy. And I'm like, oh, and I started with what I could. O sea, empecé de a poquitos porque nadie nunca me enseñó cómo hacerlo. Y entonces ahora tengo también el pensamiento de que el dilema de dejar el dinero en la cuenta de los ahorros o hacer que ese dinero trabaje por mí. What is the difference? When do we know what we should keep in our savings account versus what we should invest and have our money actually working for us? Because I think a lot of people overlook that too. O sea, nuestras mamás que a veces guardaban el dinero debajo del colchón en vez de invertirlo y hacer que tenga un retorno, ¿no?
Sí, no, igual, porque a mí tampoco me enseñaron nunca de eso. Yo vine a aprender when I started working at CNBC. That's when I started learning about, saving for the future and investing and, not keeping your money under the mattress, right? So it's important. So for example, like savings account are good to have when you need to save and have money for an emergency, right? It could be a car repair. It could be something, just an expense that's out of the ordinary, right? Because that you need easy access to that money, right? So that's what you keep in your savings. Anything you need easy access to that you don't have to wait, because that is one of the downsides, for example, of some of these online accounts, that you can't access the funds immediately. And a lot of times you also can't access the funds immediately in investing in these brokerage accounts. You need a couple of days. So when you need something for an emergency, you definitely want to have that as your savings account, anything that you can access quickly. When it comes to investing, your money's going to grow. So if you don't need that money right away, if it's money that you're like, okay, this money, I don't have to worry about it. It's money just to let it grow over time. That's perfect, because you're not going to need it. You're not going to need to dip into it. So that's what you kind of have to make sure you differentiate with what you're putting into your investment account and what you're putting into your savings account. Mm-hmm. And just make sure you know the difference and when you're going to need what.
Y el mercado está un día para arriba, otro día para abajo. We don't know what to expect these days. Is it a good moment for women to invest in the stock market?
Look, it's always, so first of all, let's talk about the whole going up and down, because it's happened before. Right now, we're definitely living in unprecedented times, with what's going on in Ukraine. That's affected the stock market a lot, with what we're here, every time we get a new number from the economy, whether it's inflation numbers or employment numbers, all of these also have an impact on the stock market. And because of everything that's been going on, the news every day either sends it up or sends it right back down, right? So unfortunately, recently there was, over the last couple of months, there's definitely been a downturn, just like there was back in 2000, 2008. There's been multiple times where the market has suffered pretty tremendous downturns. But we have to keep in mind what happens. It always recovers, always recovers. So, right now, sure, there's volatility, right? And if you are afraid of losing money, it's probably not a good idea, because there's so much fluctuation that if you go in and put money in right now into an investment account, and then you check it within 2 or 3 weeks, it can be very scary. And then uno se desencanta y dice, well, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I put in this money and I lost it right away. But when it comes to investing, you have to set long-term goals, right? That's the key, that you can't go in and thinking, oh, in 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to have all of this money. That's just not how it works. You have to just go in it for the long term, put money in for the long term, and know that the market is going to go up, the market is going to go down, it's going to get scary, but it always recovers down the road, always.
And what about diversifying? O sea, diversificar y tener inversiones en distintos ámbitos, ¿no? Tal vez el real estate, ¿lo recomiendas? ¿Cuáles son los consejos en cuanto a eso?
Sí, es importante porque por la misma razón que if something goes up, something else is going to go down. So if you're diversified, you're going to have kind of this safety net, right? So you're going to see something else go up, you'll see something else go down. And whether it's real estate, people do invest a lot in real estate. That's always a good option. It probably doesn't make as much over time as you would in the stock market. Or in that kind of investment, but it's always good to have other options. It's always good. Like I mentioned with the stock market, over time, it always grows. So that's just the key. And I think that so many people are afraid of investing because of that, because, once they hear all of this in the news, oh, the Dow Jones like crashed, or, there was this huge downturn, or, the stock market is just like going down, 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 and people are afraid. But like I said, all of this happens. It's happened before, and it just goes back up.
Es algo que puede ser muy intimidante porque no sabes en qué deberías estar invirtiendo. I mean, like picking the actual stocks can be something that's daunting, and I'm sure that's why it's important to have a financial planner, an expert, someone who can help you with that.
Yeah, it is important. And look, not everyone can afford to have a financial planner because, a lot of financial planners do require certain minimums to work with them. But the advantage is that a lot of these online brokers also offer these kind of like online, or what they call robo advisors. And, you fill out a questionnaire, and these questionnaires, you obviously are putting information about yourself, because every situation is different. We all have to think about is individually, what's our situation, what's going to work for my situation. And these questionnaires, they'll ask you, how much risk do you want to take? How much money can you put? Like they ask you, questions of how much, just so it gets a sense of how much risk you can tolerate. And then based on that, it gives you recommendations. So you don't always have to go to a financial planner if that's not something that, that's within your means. You can definitely, if you want to start investing and don't know how, online brokers with these robo advisors are a really good way to start.
I mean, we have all of the technology that we could use.
We do. The world we live in today, we have the technology is there. And these robo advisors, for the most part, they come included in your account. You don't have to pay anything extra for it.
Speaking of technology, as if investing wasn't already a little bit daunting and confusing, we had cryptocurrency, these blockchains, NFTs, las criptomonedas, o sea, háblanos de eso. ¿Deberíamos estar interesadas en ese tema?
Bueno, a ver, definitivamente, right? Because there's always going to be new ways coming in of investing, right? And this is kind of the newest way. And because it's so new, there's still so much unknown about it, right? So look, this is one of those things that goes back to diversification, right? So if you want to invest a little bit in criptomonedas and all of that that's going on, that's perfectly fine. Again, you have to think about that. Cryptocurrencies are very volatile, even more volatile than the stock market. Una criptomoneda puede subir una cantidad tremenda un día y en el mismo día volver a bajar. O sea, es algo súper, súper volátil. But it's one of those things that, it's interesting because it's a new way of investing. We're going to keep learning about it over time. And if you're interested in it, it's also a good way to start. I personally would not put all of my money into it. And I think that some people might think, unfortunately, Latinos have been kind of vulnerable to that, where they fall for a lot of these kind of like scams. And we have to think about that, like these investing scams. So, we have to educate ourselves about that and think about, well, I don't want to put everything that I have into something that I don't really know about. That's really just never a smart move. If you want to put a little bit, by all means, that's great. Take that chance and just like see what happens with it. As long as it's money that you can kind of like put there and not think about. But it's interesting, with cryptocurrencies, we hear about them we most recently heard about our own Fed having government agencies look further into it about eventually making a digital currency for the US. So there's going to be more. There's going to be more down the road. So it's a very interesting sector of investing right now.
Pero es lo que decías también, mantenerse curioso, hacer preguntas, investigar, no dormirse en los laureles. ¿Es demasiado tarde después de cierta edad para empezar a invertir? Is it ever too late to start to create a plan financially for the future and becoming financially independent?
I don't think it's ever too late. Obviously, look, it's always the sooner you start, the better. Because there's always compound interest, right? So the sooner you start, the more money you're going to make down the road. Now, if it's something that it's not until later in life, whether, for some people, they start even before they turn 20 to start investing for the future, which is amazing, right? Because, down the road, they're going to be really well taken care of. But, for other people, whether it's, you didn't know about it, or whether it's your life circumstance changed, it's never too early. It goes back to saying it's better with something than nothing, right? So, it's going to take a little bit more effort. Of course it is. It's going to take a little more effort, maybe a little more sacrifices to kind of say, you know what, I just got to tighten my belt a little more and put a little extra, because this goes back to what we said in the beginning about setting kind of your mind and saying, who's going to take care of me, right? So we're the ones that have to kind of make that choice to take care of ourselves and to plan for our futures and our financial stability. So it's never too late. You have to start somewhere. And educate yourself.
And that gives you, without a doubt, so much peace of mind. Te da una paz interna saber que puedes ayudarte a estar bien para el futuro.
Absolutamente.
Claro que sí, y sé que ahorita seguramente nos están viendo muchas mamás que cuidan de sus hijos, que se quedan en casa, a lot of stay-at-home moms that care for their children. Do they have options as far as, I don't know, like 401k or a retirement fund, something that they could do for themselves?
So for stay-at-home moms, I think so when it comes to investing and to saving for retirement, for example, a 401k comes from an employer, right? It's an employer sponsored program. So that would be out of the question in that case. And then as far as an IRA, which are individual retirement accounts that pretty much anyone can open, the requirement for that is reportable earned income. Now, a stay-at-home mom isn't necessarily reporting unless if they're a stay-at-home mom and running, maybe also a, kind of a business, that's a little bit different. But if it's a stay-at-home mom that doesn't work at all, the best option would be, one of those online savings accounts, online investing accounts, or a savings account, because at the end of the day, you can save for retirement. The options are really, there's no limit to it. You can save in a savings account, in an investment account. So for a stay-at-home mom, that would be the best way, is to just through a savings account or an online brokerage account, because unfortunately, with everything else, like I mentioned with the 401k or the IRAs, those you need to either an employer or you need to have some kind of reportable earned income.
And what about undocumented immigrants that pay taxes that have an ITIN number?
So with the ITIN number, so by definition, with an ITIN number, you can open up an IRA account as long as they are filing for taxes, right? So if you are filing for taxes and you're reporting earned income and you have that ITIN number, by definition, you can absolutely do it. What the issue comes down to is if there is a sponsor, so to speak, or this would be like the account where you open it, if they're willing to actually open that account. With an ITIN number, you can open investment accounts, an online savings account. You can absolutely do that. It's for an IRA that's when it comes a little bit more complicated. But for online savings and for investment accounts, you absolutely can.
¿Nos podrías comentar eso una vez más en español para asegurarnos que todo el mundo nos entienda y que pueda pues aplicar esto a su vida?
Sí, claro. Bueno, entonces, de la mejor manera para personas que o si no tienen el Social Security Number o que tienen el ITIN Number, con el ITIN Number pueden abrir una cuenta de ahorros, pueden abrir una cuenta para invertir online, en línea. Lo que se viene más complicado es para cuentas de retiro, porque las cuentas de retiro, aunque sí por definición la puedes abrir con un ITIN Number, otro requisito es si en tu declaración de impuestos reportas ingresos de trabajo, eso es un requisito. Ahora, si no estás reportando impuestos, pues como dije antes, puedes abrir una cuenta de ahorros en línea o puedes abrir una cuenta de inversiones. Si tienes el ITIN Number y si reportas impuestos y cada año haces tu declaración de impuestos, por definición puedes abrir una cuenta de IRA, que es una cuenta individual para el retiro, pero el problema es, o lo difícil es cuando una empresa te la va a abrir, por lo que viene el estatus migratorio es un poquito complicado y porque es algo que tiene que ver con impuestos, ahí es cuando la cosa se pone un poquito complicada.
Pero lo bueno saber es que sin duda tienen opciones.
Hay opciones, eso sí, y eso es lo más importante, que las hay.
Silvana, este mes hemos hablado también sobre el apoyo para nuestras niñas, para que ellas puedan crecer, ser mujeres imparables. ¿Qué tan importante es incluir una clase de finanzas en su educación escolar, o sea, de día a día?
Es de lo más importante, de verdad, porque yo pienso que si hay esa educación, eso es algo que ahí es donde vamos a ver la brecha de género, ¿verdad? Que es algo que estamos hablando tanto cuando tiene que ver en las mujeres en el trabajo y los hombres y que ganan y que no ganan. Yo pienso que si desde un principio, desde muy temprana edad, empezamos a enseñarles a las niñas acerca de cómo manejar el dinero, cómo leer un estado de cuenta, cómo pagar las cuentas que nos llegan a la casa, cómo ahorrar, cómo hacer un presupuesto básico. Hay cosas que son tan simples, tan básicas que se pueden enseñar, que eso nos da la oportunidad de, a medida que vamos creciendo, que vamos madurando, evitar, por ejemplo, fraude, porque muchas personas, ¿qué les pasa? Es porque no entienden y no saben lo que les están ofreciendo y simplemente caen para estos fraudes, ¿verdad? Entonces, si empezamos desde una temprana edad a enseñar, a decir, esto es lo que se tiene que hacer, esas son las cosas que tienes que tener cuidado, planea desde un principio, y a medida que van creciendo, seguirles enseñando cómo manejar el crédito, cómo funcionan los impuestos. Eso son tantas cosas que eso es lo que de verdad necesitamos en nuestras vidas, porque eso es lo que tenemos que cuando ya nos graduamos y nos vamos de la casa, a nosotros son los que nos toca hacer todo eso.
Es una responsabilidad muy grande, and that financial literacy is so important, especially as the children of immigrants too that come to this country, basically finding a way to pay for the next meal. Our parents unfortunately didn't have that education. Therefore, we have that responsibility of learning how to take care of ourselves and also now teach future generations to do that.
Absolutely.
So we are wrapping up now, officially Women's Month. It's been a great month of a lot of amazing conversations, but the month of April is actually Financial Education Month. So if you had one tip, one thing you really had to emphasize about this conversation, what would it be before we close out?
I think that the key is I am so big on saving for retirement. So I think, let's all find a way to take care of our future selves and, plan for that, because retirement, if we don't plan for it ourselves, no one else is going to do it for us.
I love it. Exactly what we needed to hear. Aquí yo ya estaba tomando notas. I'm going to save this conversation, come back, reference it. Silvana, muchísimas gracias por estos valiosos consejos. Sé que has abierto hoy muchas mentes también y espero que las mujeres ahora tomen las cosas en sus manos y que empiecen a ahorrar para el futuro si no lo están haciendo todavía.
Tenemos el poder, lo tenemos.
Así es, somos mujeres imparables, unstoppable women. Silvana, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Nicole. Gracias.
Y a ustedes, todas ustedes que nos acompañaron en esta conversación, remember you can follow @Mujeres Imparables on Instagram for more inspirational stories. Thank you for your time. Bye.